It's the Sergio Show! And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez! Hello everyone and welcome to the Season 8 premiere of the Sergio Show! I'm Sergio Dominguez. Now let's get this episode started with me talking about cartoon bugs. I ain't talking about no bunnies, folks. I'm talking about bugs. You know, those little unusual creatures that are in grass and other places that are really disgusting that you want to squash. Well, most of you want to squash. But when they're cartoon characters, you kind of realize, wait, they're cartoon bugs. So do I squish them? Do I not squish them? You know, like a lot of things that are cartoons, they have personality. They have humor. They can act like humans. Some of them can even talk. There are those cartoon bugs that are just bugs that, you know, are kind of cartoons. Meaning they have a design and style of a cartoon, but for the most part, they just act like bugs. But then, those other cartoon bugs with, you know, cartoon eyes and cartoon feet, and possibly human cartoon torsos, that look like bugs, but they act like regular humanoid cartoon characters that live their lives not acting like bugs, but like regular characters that you can see in sometimes TV shows and sometimes those infamous bug movies. By infamous, you know, they're not all that liked because, you know, that's why it's hard to connect with cartoon bugs because, you know, they're cartoons, sure, but they're bugs. They're really hard to connect to as an audience member watching it because the bug appeal is really hard to connect to. Yes, there are bug fans out there, but how can you connect to something that's tiny and gross and sometimes dangerous, even if you give it cute little eyes and face and even cute little bug antennas? Well, there are those movies that try by using drawings or, say it with me, CGI. But even with the lavish CGI, they still come off as cartoon bugs. The cartoon is appealing, but the bugs, wow, can it make or break that deal? Well, that's what this episode I'm just monologuing about. Cartoon bugs. Yeah, what can you do? Well, I think I've talked enough about this monologue. So anyway, I'm going to end the episode right now. That's all for this bug cartoon-tastic episode of The Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez saying have an animated day. Sergio Studios. The Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Hello guys, and welcome to another great episode of my animated webtoon series, The Sergio Show. Now before I get this show started, I just want to say that I love animation! I know, big surprise, but I just want to let you guys know that, and, you know, just want to get that out of the way, and it's no way foreshadowing anything that's going to happen in a couple of seconds. Anyway, let's get this show started with... Huh, I guess there was two of them. Huh. It's a good thing I rented this wood chipper for no apparent reason whatsoever. And yes, I'll put him in the wood chipper too. Killing bodies has made me tired. Yawn. I'm gonna go take a nap on this couch. Yeah, I know. Give me a couple minutes. Oh, that was a terrible dream. Well, I guess I'll end the episode right now. Well, that's all for this episode of The Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez, saying have an animated day. Sergio Studios. It's the Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Hi, how's it going? This is Sergio Dominguez with another episode of the Sergio Show. You know, I've talked about a lot of cartoon things throughout this series. I mean, we're going to talk about more like cartoon fish, but that's later this season. For this episode, I'm going to talk about another thing that can become a cartoon. And that is cartoon inanimate objects. Yeah, oddly enough, one of the most appealing and relatable kind of cartoon that audiences enjoy connecting to are oddly things that aren't really alive. Just take an object that people do like, then give it a cartoon personality, cartoon art, and cartoon whatever else, and voila, it somehow becomes a profitable cartoon that everyone can watch and enjoy. Just like that. How? Well, that's how great storytelling can be. That's how great character animation can be. And most importantly, that's how great storytelling can be. And also, I just said that earlier. But also voice acting and other things can make a cartoon inanimate object so appealing. As for what specific object that can become a cartoon that everyone will love, well, that always depends on the person who creates a cartoon character. Usually, the best kind of inanimate cartoon character is the one a lot of people can relate to and like toys, or video games, or cups, or t-shirts, or a digital device, or even a writing utensil, or I'm just looking off to the distance to see what else. A cabinet, yeah, that's it. Cartoon cabinet can be loved and earned by billions of dollars if you can just, give it a cartoon life and story. Sure, anything's possible thanks to the wonderful art form that is animation. And I'm here just blabbing about it. I may not be a cartoon inanimate object, well, depends who you ask, but I know that I love cartoons, and I also especially love cartoon inanimate objects, and I hope you do too. And what else can I say about this? That's all I can say about cartoon inanimate objects. I hope you learned something from this. If you haven't, oh well, that happens. You don't watch the Sergio Show to learn. Oh well. That's all for this episode of The Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez, saying, have an animated day. Sergio Studios. Here it is, the special that nobody cares about, but we did it again like 3 years later. It's the Sergio Show! Stop motion animated special 2! Now with 10% less stop motion animation. And here's your frame captured host, Sergio Dominguez. Yes, welcome to the Sergio Show, and for the second time, it's good old stop motion animation, and I'm Sergio Dominguez, now newly designed and remade for this form of animation. Just like the old stop motion me, I'm made out of good old paper, wires, and other things. So, let's get this stop motion animated special 2 started! Now that we're all gathered together, let's party with a Sergio Show style stop motion animated party montage like the previous one that I did before. So enjoy! Ha ha ha! That was sweet. And that's all I have for this episode of the Sergio Show Stop Motion Animated Special. I would like to thank all the figures who were part of the party montage and the businessman for leaving me alone later. Anyway, I'm Stop Motion Animated Sergio Dominguez saying have an animated day, stop motion animation style. Sergio Studios. It's the Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez. For this episode, I'm going to talk about cartoon old people. Yeah, that's right, I'm going to talk about that. Yep, old people are just human beings that have lived a long life that they've shown their age. Hopefully I defined that better, but I don't know if you liked it. Either way, I'm just talking about old people that are actually cartoon characters. Yes, there are those old people that are cartoon characters that you see in sitcoms. Sometimes you see in other TV shows. You see them as wise characters in these fantasy movies. But ultimately, they are these characters that are just really, really old, and you see them as cartoon old people. But you know, the type of cartoon old people I personally don't like are really the old grouchy, mean old cartoon people. You know, the ones that always have an angry face. They're always like, heh, and I hate the cliche line, "You kids get off me lawn." And also, you know, when they have a cane, they just hit people with it, or animals, and I just don't like that. Not because it's mean, because, you know, it is mean. But what I hate the most about it is old people and cartoon old people, they're not really like that, you know? They're human beings like anyone else, like cartoon kids and stuff. They're ultimately nice. They still appreciate life even if they're really old. I just hate that they're mean-spirited and grouchy. You know, they're just human beings that are cartoons that have lived a longer life than anyone else. And I hate when they're grouchy and mean-spirited and shaking their fist or cane in the air and complaining. I always hated that in cartoon old people. You know, they're better than that. They're more joyful than that. It's always fun when you see a cartoon old person that's happy, joyful, and appreciating life, even if they live so long and they don't know how long they could live after that. I always appreciate that. And someday in the future, I will too someday be an old cartoon character. But I don't know if it really is going to happen because, you know, I'm a cartoon. I'm a cartoon young adult too. So I don't know if I'll ever age. But that's another episode. Wait, an episode about cartoon aging? Can the show go there? Can I ever talk about it? I don't know, and I don't think so. Maybe, I guess. Gosh, I don't know. Also, one final thing. When it comes to cartoon old people, I do have a cartoon old person of my own. She's my grandma. And someday she might appear on the show, you know, whenever she's ready or not. But, you know, this is a wink and a nod to that. Anyway, that's all for this episode of The Sergio Show. I hope you understand about cartoon old people a little bit better. Anyway, I'm Sergio Dominguez saying, have an animated day. Sergio Studios.
Minimize the pages on other social networks you're on right now because it's the Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Well, hello, audience viewers, and welcome to another episode of the Sergio Show. I'm the host, of course, Sergio Dominguez. And that's all for this episode of the Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez, saying have an animated day. Sergio Studios.
It's the Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez. Now, for this episode, I want to talk about cartoon cameras. And I'm not specifically about cartoon cameras, like cameras in cartoon form. I'm talking about cameras used in cartoons. You see, animation is a visual medium, so you gotta tell the story and show the characters as beautiful and visual, as vibrant as possible. And to do that, you gotta have the best cameras to show off the wonderful medium of cartoon animation. Yes, a lot of different forms of animation do use different kinds of cameras. For example, stop motion animation does use physical cameras like the cameras used in live action filmmaking. Since stop motion animation is a form of animation where you take real life animate objects and try to move them a little bit at a time, you can use cameras used in live action filmmaking to make that form of animation possible. And same thing goes to hand-drawn animation from the early days. Why? Because they had to use actual paper and thin sheets of plastic paper used as cells to capture every frame of animation, and they have to do it by capturing a special camera that's also used for filmmaking to record animation. Now, I'm going to get a little bit more technical here, so brace with me on this one. As for animation used on the computer, you can't take a real-life live-action filmmaking camera and record the animation off of it because, all of it's in the computer. So, with the programming itself, those programs that used to make digital animation, CGI, and flat 2D animation, they have special digital technical coding cameras. What I'm saying is, cameras specifically made for the software to record off of the animation that's being animated. They use that kind of camera to capture the wonderful form that is CGI, computer-made animation. Instead of having it look like a real physical filmmaking camera, it's just a digital coding camera, like a layer on a screen or something digitally put together that's specifically made to capture the image of the digital animation. And if I'm talking too much about this and not making any sense, well, this is the best way I can improvise this moment. So, what I'm trying to say in this episode is that cameras are important in animation because they capture it. And they capture it, they show it, because it's a visual medium of animation, which is the biggest part, filmmaking. And that's why cameras are that gosh darn awesome. So, with that in mind, I'm going to end this episode. Well, that's all for this episode of The Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez, saying, have an animated day.
Sergio Studios.
It's the Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Sergio Show, and I'm Sergio Dominguez. Now, let's get this episode started with me talking about different kinds of funny cartoon security. That's right, security. You know, the thing to protect your items or even household or where you live. You know, in live action security, it's simple security system, sometimes a lot more complicated. But with cartoons, they actually have a funny cartoon type of security. But I'll tell you about it right now. And maybe somebody is used to secure my home studio, which is Sergio Studios. Anyway, let's get started. First off, the eye security. Since cartoon characters have so many different kinds of cartoon eyes, specifically the cartoon dot eyes, there's a special security that checks what kind of cartoon eye is it. If it is a typical cartoon eye with a dot and a circle, then maybe you're in or out. Or if you're one of those creative cartoon eyes that actually has human eye detail, then maybe that's a possibility. But depends how you set up the keyboard that will let you in, depending on what kind of cartoon eye you have, then you're in. If you're not, you're out. Next one I want to talk about are the security systems where you have to use your hand. Now this is an interesting one, because cartoon characters have different kinds of cartoon hands, of course. But depends how you set up that system. If you're the kind of cartoon character with 4 fingers, gloves or no gloves, or if your fingers are like round banana sausages, or pointed rounded female fingers, or whatever shapes, you got to use that to put over the keypad to get in to whatever you're trying to get into. If your cartoon hand matches, you 4-fingered, 5-fingered, maybe even 9-fingered hand cartoon character, do you? Another cartoon security that I want to talk about is intense, and that is the laser security system. You see, in more high quality locations, they use laser securities, meaning if you're in but the security is on, that means you have to go through lasers, and if you go through one of those lasers, chances are you're going to get caught, or worse, those can be one of those lasers that can cut you. You'll be doomed. But that's also really funny. If your kind of cartoon can get through lasers, how? Maybe if you can shape through it, or you're one of those cartoon characters that are very rubbery and snake-like that you can get around those lasers. So that's why there's a security system where the lasers are cartoony themselves. So if you try to go through them, that cartoony laser can get around you and you will get caught. It's just that cartoony simple. Use cartoons to get the cartoon to secure yourself of the cartoons. Yeah. Well, I guess that's all I can say about that. So, just saying, keep yourself safe with good old cartoon security if you are, a cartoon. Well, that's all for this episode of The Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez saying have an animated day.
Sergio Studios.
It's the Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez. Now for this episode, I'm going to talk about another cartoon animal. Yeah, that's right, me talking about another cartoon animal. Wow, that's so new and so reoccurring. And it's cartoon fishies. Yeah. Now this is interesting, cartoon fishies. Mostly because of the fish aspect of the cartoon. Unlike cartoon like dogs or cats or whatever, cartoon fish, they're just sea creatures that live under the watery ocean that's vast. And, the way that they look and they're shaped, how can you see them as cartoons? Well, a lot of them begin simply with Just take the anatomy of a fish and put cartoon eyes and face over it. Start from there, and then they become a cartoon fish. You know, some classic, awesome anime cartoon has once put 3 eyes on a fish, and it looked awesome. And oddly enough, from that concept, you can get a lot of mileage out of a cartoon fish with just the fish part and a cartoon face. Simply a story about that cartoon fish with a mermaid or a cartoon fish that's trying to find his son can get a lot of mileage, even if the whole body is a fish. You just gotta get the right story and characters, and a cartoon fish like that can work like that. But if you want to go more outrageous of getting what a cartoon fish can look like by doing more than just a cartoon face on a fish, you can do that by altering the body of a fish by turning the fins into arms and the tail to actual cartoon fish legs. And as weird as it looks, you can get a lot of creative benefits out of that if you more cartoonize, if that is even a word, of a fish. And it can work like that even more if you can also set up an environment of the ocean, because let's face it, if it's in the ocean, it's just going to be lots of water and other scary fish and weird plant-like things. It looks nice, but how can you cartoon that into making it work, past it being, cartoon ocean, by turning it into a nice environment that's livable by humans who are cartoons also. And from there, as crazy as it looks and sounds, it can work like that when using cartoon fish. So yeah, cartoon fish. And that's all for this episode of The Sergio Show. I'm Sergio Dominguez, saying, have an animated day.
Sergio Studios.
It's the Sergio Show. And here's your host, Sergio Dominguez. Hello and welcome to the Season 8 finale of the Sergio Show. With me, Sergio Dominguez. And boy, what a crazy season this been. Well, it's supposed to be me talking about a lot of cartoon thingamajigs, like cartoon fish and cartoon security and cartoon old people of all things. But you know what? I had a fun time monologuing about all the cartoon things, and I hope you did too, if you cared about it. So, what am I going to do for the Season 8 finale of the Sergio Show? How about song parodies? Huh? You want song parodies? Okay, song parody, here I go! Oh, song parody. That's right, I'm doing song parody. Look at me doing a song parody. Song parody. Woo-woo! Song parody! I'm just kidding, folks. Let's just go back to this. Yeah, no, for copyright reasons, I can't do song parodies. Oh, well. Now, let me talk about something else. What can I talk about? Oh, this. I'm a cartoonist. I know I don't show that much, but, I'm a cartoonist. And how do I make cartoons? Like in that cartoon I made and that other cartoon, if you've seen it. But how do I make cartoons? How does a cartoonist make cartoons? Well, not only the right equipment, but really the ultimate key thing that makes cartoons possible for a cartoonist is the almighty imagination. Yes, that thing in your head that gives you ideas both verbally and, for cartoonists, visuals that you just want to take it out of the head and put it on a canvas. Whether the canvas be a paper, a table, a computer screen especially. But that's where the cartoonists get those ideas for cartoons. From their imagination, from their head. And that usually comes from the imagination through life experiences, through watching other stuff, through brutal thinking. The imagination is the ultimate part of creativity, especially if you're a cartoon being a cartoonist. And that's a very thing to know. Imagination is important, especially if you're being a creative person, doing what you love very creatively. So, if you do love imagination, and you love being a cartoonist, then you know what I'm talking about. So that's all I want to talk about for this episode of the Sergio Show, that imagination is very beautiful, very important, and a great asset for being a cartoonist. Well, that's all I can say about this episode of the Season 8 finale of the Sergio Show. Thank you for watching and mostly listening. I am Sergio Dominguez saying, have an animated day. Sergio Studios.